Hello, Sagittarius. There are eyes that don't need to speak, yet leave the truth with no place left to hide. And there is a zodiac sign before whom even the darkest witches tremble. Not because they are hunted, but because the light from that sign burns through every lie ever told. Yes, I'm speaking of Sagittarius. In today's video, I will reveal why witches are burned alive in the presence of a Sagittarius soul, and why your light has the power to transform everything. This is not just astrology, this is a summoning of truth. I am ready to ignite the truth within me, a sacred vow so that the light inside you is no longer forgotten. If you feel awakened, leave a like and share this video so the flame of Sagittarius can light the path for those still trapped in the dark. And now, let us begin. Why is Sagittarius the sign of truth, the nightmare of those who thrive on illusion? Some souls are born to illuminate, but not with a gentle candle, with a sacred fire, one that burns away all that is false. And among the 12 signs, only one bears the form of a half-human, half-god. Chiron, the symbol of Sagittarius, is not just a mythological figure, but an ancient reminder of the spiritual power hidden within us all. Jupiter, ruler of Sagittarius, does not bring false peace. It brings divine justice, piercing illumination, and the uncomfortable price of truth. That is why those with Sagittarius energy cannot survive long in false environments, and others, especially those who cling to shadow, cannot survive long in their presence. I have studied thousands of birth charts over 50 years of practicing astrology, and I've seen this pattern. Every time someone with the Sun, Ascendant, or Jupiter in Sagittarius enters another's life, truth begins to surface. Not because they wish to expose, but because their light accidentally reveals the darkness others try to hide. You cannot hide beneath that light. And if you choose to run, you are not escaping. You are setting yourself on fire, with your own fear of the truth that remains unhealed. In Greek mythology, Chiron was unlike any other centaur. He was not wild, not violent. He was a healer, a sage, a mender of soul wounds. And yet the irony, Chiron could not heal his own pain. That is the paradox of Sagittarius. They come to heal others with the fire of truth, but within them lives a wound that has no name. They are not perfect light. They are real light, burning, unpolished, but sincere and never false. It is the light of Sagittarius, not physical flames, that makes the witch burn in fear. Because Sagittarius hunts no one. They simply live so truthfully that the ones wearing masks collapse in the reflection of their gaze. In a world that rewards pretending, the presence of someone who dares to live honestly is seen as a threat. And Sagittarius is that presence. You cannot bribe them with shine. They would rather lose everything than live a life not aligned with their soul. Are you living like that? Or are you chasing the right image while slowly losing your true self? Sagittarius does not come to condemn you. They come as a torch, to light the way back to the version of yourself you left behind long ago. And you know something. Not everyone can endure that kind of light. In the next part, I will reveal why ancient witches, masters of illusion, could not survive the space where a Sagittarius was present. They don't fear Sagittarius for their physical strength. They fear them because their soul is a mirror reflecting everything they have refused to face. Don't leave. That part may change the way you see yourself. If you've ever felt unwelcome simply for speaking the truth, write in the comments, "I am the light, and I do not apologize for it." That sentence is not just a declaration, it is an awakening. A signal to the universe that you are ready to live in truth, like a Sagittarius awakened. And if this message stirs something in you, share this video with someone who is still living in the fire of falsehood, but longs for truth. You may be the first torch they need to see. So never underestimate your presence. Don't ever think you don't matter. Now, let me tell you a true story. A forgotten tale buried since the 13th century, about a witch who was burned alive, not by the church, but by a fear so uncontrollable it consumed her entirely. The fear of a child, born under the sign of Sagittarius. This child held no sword, carried no spell, only one thing, their gaze. And you'll understand why. The gaze of a Sagittarius can tear through every illusion this world has built. Stay with me, because the truth is waiting for you. There is a kind of person you simply cannot lie to. Not because they interrogate you, but because when you look into their eyes, the things you've hidden suddenly, inevitably, reveal themselves. That person is very likely a Sagittarius. In ancient astrology, Sagittarius was never just the sign of adventure or knowledge or far horizons. They were the ones who could pierce doctrine, the ones who carried a spiritual torch into the shadows others dared not enter. Not everyone can bear their presence, especially those who live by deception. There is a trembling handwritten note found in a medieval European manuscript, written by an old witch. When Jupiter rises in the first house, I cannot utter the spell. The child's eyes, they see through blood, through fire, through the effigies I have made. And if you are someone who believes in symbols, you'll know this is not coincidence. Sagittarius, ruled by Jupiter, is the only soul who can touch sacred wisdom without losing themselves in the process. I've seen this in real life. I've witnessed people with Jupiter in the first or ninth house. They don't argue, they don't judge, they simply show up. And suddenly, those around them can no longer continue lying. There are people who don't need to speak loudly or wield any authority, but the moment they enter a room, everything changes. They don't demand your honesty, but somehow you cannot be dishonest in their presence. And that is why ancient witches feared Sagittarius. Avoid performing rituals in the presence of Jupiter energy in fire signs. Not because Jupiter disrupts, but because Jupiter, especially when passing through Sagittarius, summons the power of transparency. And transparency is the death of any magic built on concealment. I believe some people don't need degrees, religions, or tools to become spiritual guides. They are guides because they live in truth. And Sagittarius, with their honest heart and eyes that see beyond the horizon, is one of those beings. In your loneliest moments, you don't need someone to speak. You just need someone who dares to live authentically. And when a Sagittarius does that, you suddenly find the courage to do it too. Don't be afraid of those who question you. Be afraid of those who question themselves and dare to answer with truth. They are the ones who can lead you far, not with power, but with presence. Did you know that among the ancient initiatory lineages, some secret orders issued a very peculiar warning? They didn't speak of enemies. They didn't name demons. They warned of the ones who live in truth. The one who lives in truth can destroy any ritual built on deception. And no one lives more truly than an awakened Sagittarius. Maybe you've met someone like that. They didn't force you to speak truth, but you simply couldn't continue lying, because their gaze saw the part of you you hadn't dared to face. And somehow, you felt afraid and deeply grateful at the same time. If you've ever felt that your truth was enough to make others change, just because I live in truth, and I accept my light, because sometimes a single honest sentence is a spell of healing for the world. In astrology, Jupiter represents sacred truth. Not the truth of books, but the truth born from soul experience. Those who carry Sagittarius energy often see the cracks in the very things others worship. They don't believe just because someone tells them to. They don't bow down because someone threatens them. Instead, they ask, and they keep asking until the truth rises, like a stone emerging from deep water. They ask because they refuse to live a life blindfolded. And this is what makes witches fear them. Sagittarius cannot be controlled, not by power, not by emotions, not by manipulation of the mind. But did you know there was once an ancient ritual that failed simply because a Sagittarius child accidentally walked by? They didn't speak, they didn't interrupt, they only existed. And the entire ritual collapsed. Why? I'll tell you the true story, and why those who carry Sagittarius energy can unintentionally bring down entire systems of shadow without ever laying a hand on them. The world is not short of witches. It is not short of manipulators, of deceivers, of masters of illusion. What the world is missing is someone who dares to live in truth. And maybe you are that person. If you've ever been called too blunt, too honest, too different, remember this. Maybe you're not the problem. Maybe you are the torch that darkness fears the most. There are things that don't need to be exposed. They simply cannot exist anymore once the light becomes strong enough. That's what happens when a Sagittarius walks into a room. They don't need to speak. They don't need to unmask anyone. Their presence alone is enough to melt down everything that isn't real. In ancient astrology, Sagittarius wasn't just known as the one who carries the arrow of truth. They were also known as the flame of the soul, a fire that does not burn out of rage but awakens out of love. They don't rebel for the sake of defiance. They simply cannot look away from deceit. And when the light of their awareness shines through, every false spell, every smoke and mirrors illusion simply collapses. Not because they are stronger, but because real light does not have to fight darkness. It only has to appear. I once witnessed a group healing session where someone with powerful Sagittarius energy entered the meditation space. No one knew who they were, but when they sat down, the atmosphere shifted. One person began to weep. Another retracted a lie they had spoken only minutes before. The facilitator, normally composed, had to pause the session, saying, "The energy is too strong." You see, not all magic comes from ritual. Some magic comes from absolute truth. And that is the power of Sagittarius. Jupiter, the ruling planet of Sagittarius, represents the expansion of knowledge, spirituality, and sacred truth. When Jupiter or the Sun moves through this sign, whatever is hidden is drawn into the light. Many dark magical traditions, especially among the Black Witches, avoid performing rituals during this time. Not because their power weakens, but because false magic cannot survive long in an atmosphere flooded with awareness. Have you ever noticed that those who live in truth are often the ones most rejected? Not because they've done wrong, but because the truth they carry leaves others with no excuse to keep lying to themselves. In today's age of noise and distortion, I believe the one who lives in truth, the one who brings light, is the modern mystic. They don't need a wand. They don't need incantations. They only need to speak the truth, and illusions will unravel on their own. When you live in truth, you don't have to extinguish anyone else's flame. You only need to guard your own fire. And what is false will vanish on its own. That is how Sagittarius heals, not by force, but by presence. You don't need to shout to prove you are the light. You only need the courage to light yourself. Even when the world around you chooses silence, your presence is enough, your gaze is enough, and your heart, if it dares to live honestly, will become the most powerful tool of healing this world has ever known. Have you ever met someone whose Sagittarius energy made it impossible for you to lie? Share that story, because you may not be the only one who's felt that way. And if you are that person, write this: I am the flame. I do not need magic to bring light. You think the light of Sagittarius only dissolves illusions? No. There is something deeper, something far more mysterious. It is when you yourself are living behind a mask you didn't even realize you were wearing, and then a Sagittarius arrives. They won't force you to take it off, but just by their presence, the mask falls away. Let me tell you about a phenomenon mystics call the mirror of the soul, and why a Sagittarius can make you see a part of yourself you buried long ago. Don't leave, because what comes next might be the missing piece you've never dared to face, but the one your soul needs most to come back home. There is a kind of light that doesn't come from the sun, not from a campfire, not from any lamp or candle. It is the fire of the soul, a flame that only ignites when someone dares to live in truth. And the one who carries that flame in astrology is called Sagittarius. In the Judeo-Christian tradition, fire is always tied to the presence of the divine. When Moses encountered God, he did not appear as a man. He came as a bush, burning yet not consumed, and impossible to ignore. In the same way, when a Sagittarius speaks the truth, you cannot turn away. You may feel uncomfortable, you may feel angry, you may even cry, but you cannot remain unchanged. They don't do it to control you. They don't do it to win. They do it because they cannot live any other way. They are the keepers of the flame of truth, the flame of the divine. I once witnessed a healing circle where a young woman with both Jupiter and the Sun in Sagittarius quietly shared her painful journey. She didn't cry. She didn't blame anyone. She simply spoke. Her eyes calm, her voice steady, and the entire room fell into a strange silence. No one could look away. No one could lie. I watched one person retract a false accusation. Another confessed to their father for the first time in years, all because she lived in truth and lit a light no one else had dared to touch. When you live as light, darkness cannot remain, not because you push it away, but because it cannot bear your presence. For the spells created from fear, from the desire to control others, only work when the soul is still asleep. When Sagittarius light enters, the soul awakens, and the manipulator loses their power. You cannot hypnotize someone who has opened their eyes. You cannot deceive someone who dares to face themselves. Have you ever stood before someone and, without knowing why, everything you tried to hide suddenly felt exposed? You didn't know why you wanted to speak the truth. You just knew you couldn't pretend any longer. If you've ever felt that, you may have met a keeper of the fire, someone carrying the energy of Sagittarius. If you're holding a truth you've never dared to speak, if the fire in your heart has started to dim, write this: I am the keeper of the flame. I will not let my truth go out. That is not just a sentence. It is a ritual of return, a sacred act of remembering who you are. But to carry the flame is a sacred privilege and a heavy burden. Because when you carry light within, you don't just illuminate others, you expose the hidden shadows within yourself. Why do those who carry the Sagittarius soul often feel so alone? And why is it that their very presence, even when misunderstood, is exactly what this world needs most? There are truths that cannot be spoken. They are awakened by a look, one gaze, one gentle touch, one presence that makes it impossible for you to pretend for even one more second. And no one brings that truth more gently, yet more powerfully, than a Sagittarius. In astrology, the 9th house is the realm of higher knowledge, faith, philosophy, truth, and the connection to a soul greater than oneself. It belongs to Sagittarius, not to tell others how to live, but to help them remember who they once were, before the world told them to forget. That is what makes Sagittarius different. They don't come to destroy what is wrong. They come to free you from the lies you've become entangled in. The witches, those who thrive on fear, control, and manipulation, they don't fear being exposed. They fear being forgiven, because true forgiveness is not about letting things go. It is about forcing the soul to face what it tried so long to bury. And here lies the paradox. Sagittarius does not forgive with words. They forgive by refusing to let you continue deceiving yourself. You cannot pretend forever under the eyes of a Sagittarius, not because they judge you, but because they love you enough not to let you keep lying to your own soul. I once heard a story that healed something deep inside me. An old man who had betrayed his family, who had lived for years in silent regret, happened to meet a young woman with her sun in Sagittarius. She knew nothing of his past. She simply looked at him and said, "I don't know why, but I feel like you were once a very different man." He broke down, and for the first time in 30 years, he wrote a letter to apologize to his son. No one asked him to, no one accused him, just one person dared to see the goodness buried deep within him. Forgiveness is not excusing the past. It is releasing the soul from an old performance so it can return to its original self. And Sagittarius, they carry the torch of that release, not through dogma, but through presence. Presence filled with so much love that it makes others want to be real again. In a world where everyone wears masks, the one who doesn't is seen as a threat. But that same person is also our last hope of remembering our true face. If you are a Sagittarius or carry this sacred energy, you don't need to say profound things. You just need to be there with a sincere heart, and you will have already begun to free others just by your presence. If you have ever helped someone remember who they are just by being there, or if someone ever awakened you with nothing but their gaze, write this. I choose to forgive because I choose truth. This is not just for others. It is for you. But there is something rarely said about Sagittarius. When you're the one who always helps others live truthfully, who helps you live in truth with yourself. Let me tell you why those who carry the light of truth often feel the most alone, and why they still choose to hold the flame, even when their hands begin to bleed. Some fires do not come to burn you down. They come to return you to your original self. And there are people misunderstood as too blunt, too difficult, too honest, yet your soul knows they came to free you from the thing you could never let go of. That person is often a Sagittarius. In life, there are witches who use no spells. They manipulate, they control emotions, they thrive on fear. They build a world where everything looks fine, but deep inside, there are pieces still shattered, never healed. And then Sagittarius enters. They don't expose, they don't accuse, they don't make a scene. They simply live in truth, and that truth becomes a flame, one the manipulator can no longer escape. This is the painful paradox of the enemy. They are not burned by others. They are burned alive by the awakening flame they themselves ignite when standing before a soul that is real. I once witnessed a mother who had spent her entire life forcing her child to live within a moral mold, hiding her own wounds under the name of love. She met her child, a Sagittarius. And that child did not rebel, did not destroy. They simply said, I can't live the life you were too afraid to live. And the mother collapsed. She cried for 3 days. But on the 4th day, she said, you made me realize I never hated the truth. I just never dared to touch it. Sagittarius does not come to destroy you. They come to demand your rebirth. They don't need you to be perfect, but they need you to be honest with yourself. Because if not, they cannot stay. They love you, but they love the truth more. And real love cannot survive in pretense. Have you ever been burned by the truth? Have you ever been hurt because someone dared to tell you the truth? But then, did you find yourself living more honestly after the pain? Tell your story in the comments, because maybe your story is the flame someone else has been waiting for. We fear pain. But sometimes, pain is the ritual of rebirth our soul has long awaited. And Sagittarius, they are the ones who open that door, not with their hands, but with a heart that refuses to bargain with darkness. Not everyone who causes you pain is your enemy. Sometimes, the one who dares to tell you the truth is the only one who truly wants you to live as your soul intended. And you think that's the end? No. Fire is only the beginning. You are about to discover one of Sagittarius's deepest gifts, the gift of transmitting fire, the power to help others remember who they are. A Sagittarius doesn't just live honestly, they make you want to live honestly too. Don't leave, because what comes next won't just touch your heart, it will awaken you. There are flames not meant to warm one person, they are born to be passed on. And there are souls whose every step is an unspoken sermon, whose every word is a ray of light that stirs the sleeping. Those souls are called Sagittarius. In generational astrology, Sagittarius is not just the learner, but the one who awakens the desire to learn in others. Not through lectures, not through rules, but through the belief that every soul holds a sacred wisdom that has only been forgotten. They don't teach because they are better. They teach because they cannot bear to see your light left asleep. There is a flame called the fire of the Holy Spirit. In Christian teachings, it is the sign of resurrection, of sanctification, of divine calling. And if you look closely at the journey of Sagittarius, you'll see they carry the same light. Not forceful, but ever inviting. Not controlling, but never compromising. I once knew a middle-aged man, a skeptic. He mocked all things spiritual, lived a life of cold materialism, until one day he met a young teacher with the sun, Jupiter, and mid-heaven all in Sagittarius. No arguments, no persuasion. She simply told stories, gently, brilliant with light. And after a few months, the man began rewriting his will. not to divide wealth, but to pass on values. I've realized I don't want to leave behind money. I want to leave behind light. When you pass on the flame, you lose nothing. You simply help others find their own light. And here's the miracle. The flame doesn't weaken. It grows with every soul it touches, every heart it reignites. Those who carry many planets in Sagittarius, especially the Sun, Jupiter, Mercury, or MC, are often born with a mission: to teach, to enlighten, to awaken, but not through dry information. They transmit energy that helps others remember who they truly are. They are missionaries without religion, guides without a pulpit. They arrive like a quiet invitation, and anyone who steps into their light never walks the same again. Do you remember someone in your life? Someone whose simple words changed the way you saw yourself? Someone you cannot forget because they refused to let you shrink into the small version you once accepted? If you do, you may have been touched by the flame of a Sagittarius. Name the first person in your life who made you believe you had something greater to live for. Or if you are that one carrying the flame, write this: I choose to pass on the fire, not so others follow me, but so they remember who they are. And now you'll understand why those who carry the Sagittarius light, even when they feel alone, even when they are misunderstood, cannot stop moving forward. Because they are not just fire bearers. They are the flame itself. And once you realize you are the flame, you can never go back to the dark. There is a kind of presence that speaks no words, but just by existing makes the whole room more honest. That is the presence of Sagittarius, not to frighten others, but to remind them that truth still waits, gentle but unwavering. The witches, the ones who live on illusion and control, they do not fear Sagittarius for their power. They fear this: truth exists, and no one escapes it forever. And you, if you carry the soul of Sagittarius, you were not born to comfort the dark. You were born to illuminate it, with the one thing that cannot be faked, your true light. Because true light does not need to shout, it only needs to exist, and darkness will quietly step away. You are not the warrior with a sword. You are the one who carries the torch. And sometimes just by lighting yourself, you show others the path they'd forgotten. If today you feel a truth within you that has never fully been lived, if you know you've carried this light for a long time but haven't dared to let it burn, send this video out and write this: I am truth. I am no longer afraid. Write it down. It is a ritual, because when you dare to name your own light, darkness no longer has a place in you. And if you think this is the end, it is not. For once the light is lit, no one, not even you, can put it out. Fire is only the beginning. The next gift of Sagittarius is even more mysterious, even more powerful. It is the gift of language. When Sagittarius awakens, they not only carry the light in their hearts, they use their words as keys to unlock doors in other people's souls. Their words can make the lost remember the path they once dreamed of. Their voice can change destinies. Because when you carry fire, and you learn to turn fire into words, you don't just illuminate, you guide. Are you ready? Don't put out the flame. There's still one more journey ahead. And your voice may be the lamp this world has been waiting for.